Hey everybody, welcome back to the Optometry Money Podcast. We're helping ODs all over the country make better and better decisions around their money, their careers, and their practices. I am your host, Evon Mendrin, certified financial planner and owner of Optometry Wealth Advisors, an independent financial planning firm just for optometrists nationwide. And on today's show, we're going to talk all about cash flow and how to take a look at and assess the health of your cash flow. First, I just want to give a few updates and announcements here. First, I'm pretty excited about a few partnerships in the works for the benefit of optometrists everywhere. First, Eric Matei of Acrinos and I are working on a video series for their Cold Start Corner about the financial planning issues you need to think about when planning for a cold start and after doors open. I'm also partnering with Dr. Alan Glazier and the ODs on Facebook community to bring regular, hopefully valuable content specifically for that community and be actively involved, answering questions as much as I'm able to in the community. So if you're part of ODs on Facebook, say hi, and I'll announce more as I have more information there. Lastly, I'm planning to head out to sunny San Diego, California later this month for Academy 2022. If you'll be there, I'd love to connect. And if you're interested in being interviewed for the podcast, either about your career or experience and practice ownership, or if you have a perspective about the profession you'd love to share, would love to sit down with you and have a chance to interview you for the podcast. So let's talk about the main topic today, cash flow. What is cash flow? Cash money, moolah, it goes by many names, but whatever you call it, there is no doubting how important managing where your cash flow goes is to your financial health. And it's just the flow of money into your household and out of it. Where is it coming from? Where is it going? Where do you want it to go? If you've ever put together a very basic budget, you're taking a snapshot of that. And why is it important? Well, there may be no better indicator of your future financial health, no better leading indicator of having a healthy, balanced life financially than how well you use your cash flow today. Cash flow is the gasoline to the engine, it's air for the lungs, it's fuel to the fire, whatever other metaphor you want to use. The way you choose to invest in yourself as an optometrist, in your practice, in the various investments in your life, that's all going to drive progress as you plan for the different goals in your life. Financial independence, kids' college, house purchases, practice purchases, whatever it may be. It's also a big indicator of whether you're living a balanced, intentional life in general. Are you putting money towards the things that you feel are important based on your values, towards experiences that you enjoy, to time with family, providing for your community? Or is money going to things that aren't important to you? Are you spending money on things that you love to spend money on, things you really enjoy? Or are you trying to keep up with your peers? Or are you living entirely for tomorrow by putting every penny towards a future retirement goal and not enjoying life at all today? It's a careful balance, planning and saving for the future versus spending money and living for today, that each and every one of us has to sort of figure out as we look at how we use our money. Having clarity and control around where your cash is going can lead to confidence, ease of mind. I've seen lack of clarity and lack of control over cash flow can lead to a lot of stress and uncertainty. And let's think about the journey of dollars, the journey of cash flow for an optometrist. As a W-2 employee, as an independent contractor, as a practice owner. If you're a W-2 employee, you get a consistent salary. Maybe it's salary plus production. Maybe it's pure production. You're going to get paid regularly from your employer. And if you pull out that pay stub, you're going to see that there is a gross amount on each pay period. That's the beginning of the journey, but you don't get to keep that whole amount. As you look through the pay stub, you'll see a whole list of deductions on there. Pre-tax deductions like health insurance premiums, 401k contributions. You'll see post-tax deductions like maybe Roth 401k contributions, and you'll see taxes, federal and state income taxes, Social Security taxes, Medicare taxes, and other local taxes specific to where you're at, like maybe state disability insurance. So you have this list of deductions, some you can control, some you can't, and then finally you see the net amount. This is what actually ends up in your bank account. Then where does it go from there? Well, it's used to pay for your core living expenses like rent or your mortgage, food, gas, your fun stuff like entertainment, hobbies, travel, kids stuff, insurance premiums. It's used to cover your lifestyle and maybe even additional savings like to your savings account or a Roth IRA or taxable investment accounts. And maybe there's something left over at the end. For an independent contractor, that's going to look different because you're operating basically like a very small business. You get the full gross amount for your work without all of those deductions that you're going to see on a pay stub. You're going to need to handle all of those yourself. So you'll need to handle setting aside money for taxes, for quarterly estimated tax payments. You'll contribute to your own retirement account, likely a solo 401k or maybe a SEP IRA. You'll pay any business-related expenses or insurance premiums. Then you'll distribute that money out of your business account into your household checking and take care of your lifestyle from there. If you're choosing to be taxed as an S corp, as many do, it's a little bit different because you'll need to run an actual payroll and take deductions through there. Lastly, if you are a private practice owner, the journey of cash is a little bit more complicated because you now have two entities that you need to watch the cash flow for separately. The practice on the one hand, and then the household on the other. So the practice receives cash from collected revenue. Then that cash is going to get chipped away by core operating expenses in the practice, inventory, staff, and other OD employment costs, occupancy costs, marketing, general operating expenses. Hopefully in all of that is your own reasonable market-based wage for the work that you do in the practice. And then you have a few buckets that you're going to want to fill. You're going to set aside money for taxes. Again, those quarterly estimated tax payments, debt payments. Make sure that your cash buffer is filled up to where you want it to be and any future investment is planned for. And then finally, you can distribute profits out of the practice and into the household. So depending on the way your practice is taxed, you'll likely see cash come out of the practice from both a wage or a salary if you're taxed as an S corporation, and then also through the distribution of profits. And in all of those scenarios, you're going to start with a gross income, the very beginning, and then money is going to go to a bunch of different places. And when you combine them all, your cash flow, at least, the way I look at it, is going to go to 4 places. Like after you categorize all of them, it's really only going to go to 4 buckets, 4 categories. Your money is either going to go to spending, saving or investing, debt, and taxes. It's going to go to one of those 4 places. So if you were to tally them up and categorize them, how balanced are those categories? How healthy is the way you use your cash flow between saving and spending and debt and taxes? What's prioritized over one category over the other? How will that show up and change into the future? Or down to the main question of today. How do you assess the health of your cash flow? Here are some steps you can take based on how I look at it in my work for optometrists and also in my own cash flow as well. I use four specific metrics to see what is the health of my cash flow and is it well balanced and how does that change over time? The first thing you want to do is really just get clear on what money is coming into your household, from where, and where is it currently going. This is basically, basic budgeting activity. Just listing out and getting really clear and taking inventory on what your income looks like and where your cash is going. You can use a spreadsheet. You can use Mint. You need a budget. Whatever helps you get really familiar with your cash flow. And if it's helpful, I put a spreadsheet into the show notes that you can just download and use. Hopefully that's helpful for you. And I know a lot of people don't really like budgeting. It's not very exciting. It seems restrictive. In fact, I don't really think you need to do this ongoing to the penny budget each and every month. But what's helpful about this is it's just taking a one-time glance, a snapshot of where your money has been going. So it allows you to do first just to get a quick gut check. Like, Do you have positive cash flow? Are you spending more than you earn, or is there money left over? And it allows you to see, okay, is your money, and this is really important, it allows you to see, is your money being spent on things that are actually valuable to you or important to you? Like, are you spending money on things you love to spend money on, or is it just going to stuff that you really don't care about? That's important. So it allows you to get a quick gut check, just see where your money's going. And then taking inventory like this allows you to do the next step, which is where the traction really happens here. So step number 2 is to categorize all these different transactions into different categories. I use the 4 categories that I mentioned above: spending, saving, debt payments, and taxes. There's a lot of ways to do that, but those are the 4 buckets that I use. And then I want to, once I've sorted them out and put them into those 4 buckets, I want to turn all that into percentages as scores that I can use. So I want to look at how much of your cash is going to each of those categories as a percentage of your gross income, which is your income before any taxes or deductions are taken out. So that's the very top of your pay stub there. So we're talking about savings rate, the amount that's going towards your saving and investing, your wealth building as a percentage of your gross income. So for example, if you're putting $10,000 per year into your 401k and $5,000 per year into your savings account, that's $15,000. And if you earn $150,000, you're saving 10%. That's a 10% savings rate. And you can include, if you'd like, whatever amount your employer puts into, for example, 401k matching or profit sharing. So we have your savings rate. And then we have your spend rate. Or if you're a client, you're going to see burn rate in the app that we use together. This is your annual spending, not including any debt payments, just your annual spending as a percentage of your gross annual income. Then we have debt rate. This is your debt to income ratio, your total debt payments, your total annual debt payments divided by your annual income. And then finally, your tax rate, which is your total taxes divided by your annual income. So that's federal and state income taxes, Social Security taxes, Medicare taxes, any other state and local taxes. You want to have all of that as a percentage of your income. These 4 metrics, these 4 percentages are your financial health metrics for your cash flow. These are the vital signs to tell you, okay, is the way you use your cash flow healthy? Is it well balanced? Are there any changes that need to be targeted right now? And then it allows you to see, like, as the years go on, as your career progresses, as you enjoy life, as you save and pay down debts and different things like that, how do these metrics change over time? Your savings rate, spend rate, debt rate, and your tax rate. So let's say you wanted to target a higher savings rate. And maybe you need to trim down certain areas of spending or maybe lower your debt payments by restructuring your debt or refinancing your debt. Well, you want to track the changes of that. You want to see how that progress is going over time. These are big metrics. These are our core metrics that I use with my clients. I want to review them with them when we first meet. I want to track them and monitor them as we move forward. And then it allows you when you need to make any changes or when you need to make cash flow decisions like buying a house and taking on a new mortgage, buying a car, paying down debt by increasing the amount you're spending it or you're paying into it, or whether you need to save more or save less. Whenever you need to make cash flow decisions like that, you can go to these scores and say, okay, how does this, for example, increase in debt payments impact my debt rate? And does it maintain it within a healthy range? Right? So you can look at those decisions through the lens of these metrics, these 4 metrics. We talked about a few episodes back, episodes 22 and 23, about measuring progress towards financial independence and tracking whether you have a healthy mix of assets between liquid assets, retirement assets, real estate, and business equity. And the way you use your cash flow will directly impact those other factors, those other scores of financial health. If you have a healthy savings rate, that's going to directly impact the metric I talked about to gauge how close you are to financial independence in episode 22. Your mix of assets, so whether you have a balanced mix of assets, is directly impacted by which of these buckets your cash flow goes into. For example, if you have a healthy savings rate, you're likely going to see your liquid and retirement assets grow. If you have a high debt rate, it's possible you're paying extra into a mortgage, for example, and that means your real estate bucket, your real estate equity is going to grow. Or paying down practice debt is going to have an impact on practice equity. So if you're noticing a certain trend in the mix or balance of your different assets, then there's a good chance that's caused by an imbalance or a similar trend in where your cash flow is going. And that may not be a problem as long as it's done intentionally. Again, healthy, balanced cash flow is the biggest leading indicator of future financial success, and also a big indicator of whether you're living a balanced, intentional lifestyle. Now, what are healthy ranges for these scores? We talked about those 4 scores. For example, if you're a client of mine, you pull up the app we're going to use together and we take a look at your scores. How do we know that they're in healthy, appropriate ranges? There's nothing set in stone, and it could differ based on each person's circumstances, but there are some general principles or guidelines to share here. Let's start with savings rate. This might be the most important metric here. If you have a healthy savings rate and your debt rate isn't increasing to prop up your spending, if you have a healthy savings rate, it's very possible that the other ones are going to fall in line, that the other ways you're using your cash flow is going to fall in line. And generally, I'd like to shoot for somewhere around a 15 to 20% as like a general target for your savings rate. If you read any personal finance blog or article, like it's kind of the range where they're saying too. So if you have a $150,000 salary, 20% would be $30,000. So that's roughly a max 401k contribution plus like a backdoor Roth IRA contribution. And you can add in your employer contributions too, that match or profit sharing. So if you're a practice owner, that's really one and the same thing because you're both the employee and the owner. But those are some targets to shoot for, even if you're getting there over time. But they do change if you are planning for example, a very early period of financial independence. Well, you're going to need to really beef up that savings rate, which is going to directly impact your spending rate. You know, it's going to have a direct trade-off of saving more for the future, but spending less in today's lifestyle. What about that spending rate or burn rate? Well, the main driver here is household income. As income increases, you're going to naturally see an increase in the amount of dollars spent. Lifestyle creep should naturally happen, and that is to a point okay if your income is continuing to increase. What's important is making sure that the percentage of your income that's going to spending is staying consistent. In fact, as a household income goes up and the actual dollars spent goes up, you should hopefully see that your spending as a percentage of your income is decreasing. The higher your income, you should need a lower percentage of that income to live off of. If you're earlier in your career or the lower your income, the more of that income, the bigger chunk of that income is going to be needed to pay for your basic lifestyle expenses. As your income goes up, you should hopefully need less of it to live off of. For example, if your income is between $100,000 and $250,000, you might have a spend rate of somewhere between 45% to 65% on the very high end of your income. As income increases to maybe $250,000 to, let's say, $500,000, like that spend rate may be 40% to 60% of your gross income. It should drop a little bit. So there's a relationship there to the percentage of your income you're spending, that spend rate, versus how high your income is. What about debt rate? How much of your cash is going to debt payments? There are times in your life where this increases and other times where this is going to come down. Whether that's healthy depends on your specific situation. Debt can be a consistent part of every optometrist's life. Student debt, mortgages, practice debt, commercial real estate debt, that's not necessarily bad. Debt is really just a source of capital. It's just a source of money. But it needs to be managed prudently. It needs to be watched carefully. Some drivers here of where the debt rate is at and whether it's appropriate or healthy is where you're at in your career, your feelings and values around debt, savings rates, whether your savings rate is high or low, business plans, and other factors. Debt to income ratios, on average, let's say typically will fall somewhere between 20 and 30% of gross income as sort of like a healthy range. Below that would be relatively low. Above that would be atypically high. It's somewhere where you're starting to see a red flag there. What about your tax rate? Well, unfortunately, this is a pretty subjective number, and there's not really much I can say here on the podcast episode in detail. I mean, that's a whole podcast conversation in and of itself. It depends a lot on income, business ownership and structure, family size, whether you're married, how many kids you have, and so much more. And as taxes tend to go up, as income goes up, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You want your income to go up, and taxes are a natural part of that. But you do want to be prepared for that. You do want to plan around your taxes as proactively as possible. One thing I'll say is that tax planning is a lifelong endeavor, and you want to focus on increasing your income while limiting the taxes that you're paying over your whole lifetime. A lot of times you hear, man, I really want to pay $0 in taxes this year. Well, you don't really necessarily. The real goal that you want to shoot for is to pay for as little taxes as you can, or even maybe as smooth of a tax rate as you can over your lifetime. You don't want any years to be overly high. Those are years you don't want to pay taxes on income, or you don't want it to be unusually low. Those are years you may actually want to include more income so you can pay a lower tax rate on that income. So think of tax planning as a lifelong endeavor, as a lifelong exercise, and you want to do it as proactively as possible. That's not something that happens at the last week of December. Like, this is something that starts in January 1st, continues on through June, and then you want to plan as best as you can through the end of the year. Those are just some general guidelines, general principles, and you'll have to look at those for yourself. Think about where you want to put your money toward and make decisions from there. And work with your financial advisor if you're working with someone that knows your life and your values and your career decisions and your practices, and work with that person to make sure that you're allocating money in a way that aligns with your values and that makes sense for you. And I do want to say that these ratios change over time. There may be times where spending jumps up a little bit, or debt rate jumps up a bit, and maybe you're cold starting a practice. I know exactly what that's like in cold starting a financial planning firm myself. It's likely in that scenario, your savings rate is going to plummet. Your debt rate's going to increase with practice debt. Tax rate's going to be lower than usual. And as the practice grows, your savings rate can grow with it. Or maybe you just want to take that vacation you've been planning for, or a family member needs help, or kids are getting married. Like, there's going to be times where your spending is going to increase temporarily, and don't let hard percentages stop you from taking those and enjoying those experiences. What's really important is the long-term trend. Where are they heading over long periods of time, over your career? And be careful about adding long-term high fixed costs that are going to impact that over time. Debts, mortgages, car loans, for example. Always be mindful of what that long-term trend looks like. And lastly, remember that everything is about trade-offs. Dollars put towards one of these categories directly takes away dollars from another. Increase in spending takes away dollars from an increase in savings or debt payments or somewhere else. So being mindful of where cash flow decisions are going and how those decisions impact the other categories. Dollars towards something else. It's all about trade-offs. And do you need to have a by-the-penny budget every single month? I mean, when people hear cash flow planning, like, that's usually where their mind goes to, is this budget, this big restriction around how they can use their money, which is not fun for anyone. I personally don't think you need to have this by the penny, by the dollar budget every single month on a spreadsheet. I don't think you need to track your finances that way. You might like that. You might want to handle your finances that way, and that's perfectly fine. And it might be necessary for some optometrists to get a real grasp on their spending and start to build good habits. But I don't think you need to do that moving forward and each and every month. And it's not just because it's not fun, because it isn't, but because I prefer to look at things in terms of these categories. I want to look at spending and cash flow use in terms of categories and percentages. And for example, if your savings rate is healthy, again, if you are automating those savings habits first, debt rates are healthy, then whatever is in that spending category, that spending bucket, if it's a healthy percentage, if it's a healthy rate, go ahead and spend it however you want. And that's usually what people think of in terms of budget too. It's like a restriction around spending. Well, whatever is in that spending bucket, whatever is available for that category, go ahead and spend it whatever you want. There's a limit to that, obviously, because you need to buy things to live on. There's necessities, food, gas, house maintenance. That stuff has to happen. But the discretionary spending, that's entirely up to you. I think what's important about that, what I really want you to think about, is being intentional about how you spend your money, being intentional about how you spend your dollars. Spend things because you want to spend money on them, on things that are valuable to you, experiences that are valuable to you and your family and your community. Spend dollars on things you love spending money on. But remember, there's trade-offs. So then you have to make sure you are ruthlessly minimizing all the other stuff that's not valuable to you. So go ahead and spend dollars on the things you want within that spending category. I like to look at things in terms of percentages. That's not to say the details inside of those categories aren't important. For example, if you have a 20% savings rate, but all of the savings within that savings bucket is going to your savings account and is just cash, well, that doesn't help your long-term goals. It may be good for a short-term goal, maybe for a period of time, but in order to really build your net worth towards that long-term financial independence, you have to have a part of that savings rate, a healthy part of that savings rate going towards long-term investments. Debts, for example, in that debt rate. Well, you want to look at what types of debt you have. What are the interest rates? What are the lengths of the debts? Is it practice debt? Is it not practice debt? Or is interest deductible? So the details within each of these categories matter, but I want to start with these categories. I don't want to start with a rigid line item budget. I want to start with these categories. But there is use for a budget. For example, like I mentioned earlier, it helps you just to take inventory of what's going on. It gives you clarity and awareness, right? So that's helpful. And to make sure that these categories that you're tracking are accurate, the right transactions are in the right categories, and that the percentages are actually accurate, you do have to have some way of tracking the way you use your cash. So, whether it's a spreadsheet budget, whether it's an app like Mint or something like that. Again, I use software for this. You do have to have some way to track the way you use your finances. You do have to have some way to track where your dollars are going. In the practice, if you own an optometry practice, the practice is much different. You should be ruthlessly detailed about how you watch cash flow in the practice. In the household, I'm okay budgeting a little bit loosely. So those are my thoughts on cash flow. Cash flow is super important and it impacts so much. So what are some action items? Well, number one, just take inventory of your cash flow. What's coming in through your income? Where is it going? Just try to get some clarity and awareness around what's going on with your money. Number two, categorize it, and based on my framework, put it into one of these four buckets: savings, spending, debt rate, or taxes. And then make some observations. Are these healthy percentages? Is one category much higher than others? Do you want to target some adjustments? What needs to happen there? So just start to make some observations, and then as you take action, track the progress. See how these percentages change over time. And talk with your advisor. Again, if this is somewhere where you have an advisor who works with you, who knows your life and your values and what you're working towards, work with that planner, work with that advisor, and he or she may have their own way of looking at your cash flow that works just as well. If you have any questions on cash flow and how that impacts your finances and other aspects of life, let me know. Send me an email at Evon, EVON, @optometrywealth.com. I'll put everything mentioned here in the show notes, including that cash flow spreadsheet. If you'd like to use it, hopefully it's helpful. If you want to look at your own metrics, your own cash flow health scores, just let me know. I'm happy to share the planning app that I use together with clients. You can input your own information, see your own scores, and it'll track that for you over time. And if you just want to have a conversation around those scores, I'd love to do that. I'm happy to do that. And once again, I really appreciate you listening, taking the time to listen to this. Hopefully this is valuable content. If you have any thoughts or ideas or feedback about topics that are important to you, about finances, career, practice management, practice finances, please let me know. I want to continue to make this a more and more valuable resource for you. And if you like the show, please subscribe. Please, one thing I'd ask of you, leave a review. Would love to see that honest feedback from you, and share it with your peers. And hopefully we'll see you out in San Diego for Academy 2022, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Want more resources to help master your money? Check out the Education Hub on Evon's website at optometrywealth.com. Evon Mendrin is a certified financial planner and owner of Optometry Wealth Advisors, a California registered investment advisor. All opinions of Evon and his guests are their own. This show is for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for specific investment, legal, tax, or other decisions. Clients of OWA may own securities mentioned on this show.